Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Depends upon when you're listening. Welcome to The Solution. Nothing changes if we change nothing. Hey, Shavar, how's it going?
Hey Ronnie, it's going, man. It's a lot going on in the world right now. Um, it's going. It's a nice, cool 75-degree day.
Yay.
Summer has gone by so fast. And actually, time has gone by so fast. You don't realize until you look
Mm.
up.
Oh, yeah. We were just saying that last night. It's like, when did it stop being March?
Absolutely. When did it stop being March? I'm like, did we like we did I didn't even get a chance to enjoy the summer. The summer's over already and I didn't get a chance to enjoy it. But September is right around the corner and there are new things happening. But yeah.
Yeah, one of the things, usually we have somebody come on and we're kind of basing it on prevention and we're getting into prevention science, but we've both been feeling such emotion over stuff. We thought it would be a good idea
Absolutely.
to just talk about what we're feeling today, because I believe it is all prevention.
Absolutely.
A lot of the reasons why young people, older people use drugs is because of what's going on around them.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important to talk about your feelings. I'm mentioned many times I'm in long-term recovery, which means I haven't had a drink or a drug or any mind-altering substance in almost 23 years. And a lot of that had to do with not talking about what I was feeling.
Hmm.
And for me, that's one of the biggest prevention strategies: to talk with
Hmm.
your friends, to talk with your kids, to talk
Hmm.
with your loved ones. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to exercise basic prevention and talk about how we're feeling. Just I'll mention briefly, I look around a lot when I'm on this podcast because I have a dog laying here on the bed who sometimes doesn't behave. She doesn't mean to not behave, but you know how kids are. But her sister right
Absolutely.
now is in the hospital having an ultrasound and a biopsy on her liver. So we're
Wow.
kind of worried, but we're hoping for the best. And I don't know. I've got good feelings underneath all the worry. I have this incredible sense of calm that we're going to be okay. But just getting
Likewise,
past that,
likewise.
I also wanted to mention today is International Overdose Awareness Day.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's something that we should probably talk about a little bit.
I agree. That's something we should definitely talk about. Growing up in the inner city, or as they call it, the ghetto or the hood, whatever. In the 80s and the 90s, seeing people, overdosing and seeing people in the streets. I don't see it as much now, but I know in my past growing up, like, I saw it a lot. And I mean, we do. Actually, let me not say that, because I do see people on the brink of overdosing or possibly overdosing near in Harlem on 125th Street. So I've seen people close to, and prior to this work, I wouldn't know how. I didn't know how to support those people. Even as a child, I didn't know what to do. I just was like, wow, in awe of what happened. Like, Ronnie, you said, like, that conversation, that piece of prevention, and what is people don't fully understand what prevention is. What does that mean? And prevention comes in different forms. Having a conversation, doing an activity, spending time with someone, expressing yourself in different forms is a form of prevention, and it's a variety of prevention. We're primarily drug prevention, but it's all connected in some way, shape, or form.
That's so true. A lot of times we get so focused on the substance that we
Right,
forget to look at the reasons and
right,
why somebody got to the point of using. And
right,
if we don't deal with what I call indicators,
right.
um, I feel like we're never going to bring that curve down. And we do bring
Absolutely.
it down on certain substances, but the overall behavior that comes out of it and the reasons for using don't
Hmm.
always change that much. And it's really important that they do. So, those indicators are so important. And, we're going to talk about some of that stuff today, the things that rise up in people's lives and our lives. I mean, I think the first place to start is what we're going through. I worked in overdose prevention for 11 years. And maybe I'll give a brief history of that. In 2002, I moved to Maine from Tennessee. Don't ask me how I got to Tennessee. I was there for 5 years. Met my spouse in Tennessee, and she wanted to move to Maine, so we did. And in 2003, I started a position with the City of Portland Public Health Division as the coordinator of all of their substance misuse prevention programs. And the big part was the overdose prevention project. And we were one of the first in the country, but they were seeing a tremendous spike in overdoses, nothing like what we're seeing now. But at that time, it was alarming. And I got to learn a lot about overdose prevention. I worked in that field specifically for the next 11 years. And there's so many aspects to that. I saw a lot of people die. I saw a lot of people get saved. Those were the years when Narcan or naloxone started coming out, and being more available to people. It wasn't available to the average citizen, but it was starting to be carried in first responders' vehicles. And we advocated for all of that, and we saw a lot of things change. So we're in a very different environment here in New York City. And just in general, people can now obtain naloxone for their own personal use to carry with them, so that if you see somebody overdosing, you can administer it. We have the Good Samaritan law, which basically says if you try to save somebody from an overdose, you're not liable for it. It's changed. Years ago, you couldn't even get people to call 911, which is still hard because people are
Yeah.
concerned that if they have an outstanding warrant, if they have something that's happened in the past, that's what they'll be focused on. But basically, it really is to save a life. And even if you have to just call and not be present at that moment, make that call, administer the
Absolutely.
Narcan, because that's the only way we're going to see these numbers go down. But we've seen more people die from overdoses in this country on a yearly basis than car accidents and accidents involving alcohol. So it's a serious issue, and people literally are dying in the streets. And a while back, one of our coworkers walked out of the building in Harlem, and somebody was
Yes.
overdosing, and she realized at that moment that how unprepared she was.
Yes.
So this is why we have this day, so that people can be ready to help save a life.
Absolutely. This is extremely important. Like I said, part of my story in my life growing up in Harlem and having friends and seeing them go into a different path. I actually had a friend quite a few years ago come to me. He was incarcerated. He did drugs, and what have you, because of the circumstances that he was in. And I remember him saying to me, yo, Chevar, I'm like, what's up? He's like, what did you do different? Because we went to the same school. We had the same friends. Like, how did you not turn out the way that I turned out? And that kind of like touched me. I'm like, I didn't really know what to say because he was right. We had the same friends. Everyone knew my mom, our family. I knew his family, but what the circumstances were, and there's nothing against his family. Like everyone's value system. Let me try to phrase this right. Everyone's values are different. Not only are your values different, your family values, which as an individual, how do you persevere and push through those things? Luckily, I was able to look towards myself, look at my mom, because grew up in a single. Well, you don't know. I'm telling you guys, grew up in a single parent home, and all I had was my mother and my brother, my younger brother, and for me, my entire life up until this day, I never want to let them down. I never want to let my mom down. And I never want to put my mom or anyone in my family in a situation where they're uncomfortable, unsafe, and unprepared. And we don't know what that looks like. I don't know what unprepared looks like. I don't know
Right.
because anything can happen. Anything right now we're in a situation where there's COVID-19 and no one's prepared. So, but up until March of 2020, I did my best in my life to put myself in a space where no one has to worry about me.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to protect everyone else. And unfortunately, this is another thing that we have to think about why people may use drugs or alcohol because they are the protectors of everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Because they have this burden on their shoulders. Like, wow, I can't let you down. I can't let you know that I have these. I don't want to use the word demons or skeletons. I don't these issues, these
Challenges.
challenge. Thank you, perfect word. You saved me. These challenges, like sometimes people go through that. Where they might battle depression or anxiety, and to cope with it might be drinking or doing drugs. And And one of the key things I always tell people is to check on that person you think is extremely strong, because
Hmm.
he, she, or they may they might want you to just say hello to them.
That's
So
right.
it's a simple hello, or a simple hey, let's hang out. Because what happens is that person who's always asking you to hang out, you never realize that no one ever asks them to hang out. No one ever
Oh,
checks on them.
it's such a great point. I always joke with people and say, I'm also a recovering control freak. Um,
Mhm.
and I was always what I call the friend director. I
Right.
was always the one who checked on all the friends, organized.
Likewise.
Yeah, we become the rocks. I organized all of the events. I was the one who kind of just led the charge with my friends. And I realized I never taught them how to take care of me.
Yes.
And that's something in recovery I had to learn, to be able to tell them, I'm struggling, I need you. But when you're the protector, you don't know how to do that.
Absolutely not. It's one of the toughest things is people look at you as if you have all the answers.
Hmm.
Because you give them answers, you give them solutions, you walk them through. You are the protector, you are the caregiver, you are the big brother, the big auntie, whatever they call you, the mom, the dad, whatever they call you, depending on the
Hmm.
circles, like you are that person. But that person, sometimes they have these things like that people don't talk about. And I'm gonna share something really quickly because Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther, one of my favorite movies for so many reasons. He has passed away,
Yeah,
uh,
so sad.
and he passed away from colon cancer. And the fact that the world didn't know that he was going through this, and again, like I talk, these strong people, these powerful people hold those things in because they don't want anyone else to have pity for them, or they want people to think of themselves. Like those are the people we have to look for. They may have a drinking. I'm not saying about Chadwick Boseman, but others they may have a drinking problem, or on the cusp of having a drinking problem, or some sort of an addiction. Like my addiction is sneakers and Funko Pops. That's my addiction. And it's still an addiction because it's something that I cope with, where it's like when I'm struggling, how do I what's going to make me happy, what's going to make me feel better at this moment.
Hmm.
You go online and hey, there's some sneakers. I probably won't wear them because I can't wear them now. I buy a collectible. They're taking up a space in my house, and that's something that those are addictions.
Yeah, I mean, we never realize what somebody else is going through unless
Mm-hmm.
we take the time to really either ask, observe, or just be connected to them. Um, I know for me, I was struggling a lot, and nobody really knew to the extent that I struggled.
Mm-hmm.
And um, you know, like I said, I had to learn to let people help me, but I
Mm-hmm.
also had to learn to speak out. But not everybody can do that. So you're right. We got to take that extra moment to check in
Mm-hmm.
on our
Mm-hmm.
friends. One thing I've been realizing, I need to check in on my Black friends.
Thank you.
And this is something I've been trying to do for a while now because I can't just assume they're okay. I say to you a lot, how are you doing?
Like
Um,
you
because
definitely
I
do.
can only imagine, I know what this has all been doing to me, what's going on, but I can only imagine what it's doing to you.
Being a black man or a black person, individual is one of the hardest things in this world. For me, at least, because there's a lot of burden and pressure, like I said earlier, about the other situation. But this is like, you are, because, in certain workplaces, you don't have a lot of us there. I'm referring to people of color or black people or black men or black women or trans, what have you. And we you go on this office space, you go on this nonprofit, and you don't see people like you. But especially not especially with a nonprofit, when you're working with inner city youth, a lot of them, a lot of inner city youth look like you, so they look up to you. But the
Hmm.
people around you don't look like them, so the connections are different. And the sometimes the back to the burden is that you have to be on your P's and Q's. You can't falter. You can't allow someone to see that you are having a bad day or struggle. Like one of the things that I hate is there's a couple of things I hate, and I don't like using the word hate, but like angry black man.
Mm.
Like I hate that. What does that even mean? Like
Just stereotype is a label that white people put on Black people.
I'm like, why? And I've been saying this more recently. Why can't I be an angry human? Like for those of you guys who know me in my life, I'm a super chill person. I'm calm. You know, I try to be as rational as possible, but I'm also human.
Hmm.
I'm also a part of this one race called human. You know, I'm also, you know, I'm human, and I should be allowed to be angry. I should allowed to be upset. You know, one of the coping mechanisms that I would do is tell jokes, make people laugh. It was to distract people, you know, from, you know, even myself, that knowing that I am the only person. Like, trust me, I don't want the attention, but I already know when I walk in the door, the attention is already on me.
Hmm.
Like, who is he? Like, you know, like I had someone tell me, "Oh, you clean up well." I'm like, what does that mean? I'm
Right.
like, like, I'm not supposed to wear a suit and tie. I'm supposed to wear a baseball cap, you know, and baggy jeans all the time. You know,
Mm.
I can't be like everyone else. You know, we come in different forms, and we have different styles, and you know, and that's why the coolest thing is to be a black person, for me at least. You know, because we have different styles, because we come in different shapes. You know,
Hmm.
but you know, again, back to that burden. It's hard, man. Like, I look out, you know, I look out the window, I go outside, and one of the suckiest things, you know, that happens in this world is there's not a lot of representation. There's not a lot for a person who looks like me, or a child, or who looks or has a similar skin tone, either lighter or darker, to look forward to. So, you know, you have, unfortunately, oh, I want to be an athlete or a musician. That's cool. That's great. But, you know, when I go in these schools, and I worked in schools for DOE schools for quite a long time, you don't see a lot of teachers there. Like, I think I know we need to make that job as a teacher, an educator, police officer, a lawyer, a judge. Like, those jobs should be like amplified,
Hmm.
because those are the gatekeepers for me. Your teacher is the gatekeeper to the world. That police officer that's supposed to protect you, he or
Hmm.
she, they are the gatekeepers. That judge that has, that if you are arrested and you go into that courtroom, that individual holds your life in your hands. That
Oh,
doctor,
so true.
that doctor holds your life in your hand. That nurse, that anesthesiologist, those jobs should be amplified. You know, again, there's nothing wrong with being an entertainer. At one point in my life, I wanted to be an entertainer. I loved basketball. I played basketball 24/7. Like, I lived basketball. You know, I lived rapping and writing poetry. But I also knew that I, everyone's not going to make it. I also knew that. Granted, I bust my butt in all those things, but I did know that everyone wasn't going to make it. So, you know, how do you turn your passion into something else? I think this program I used to participate and run in one of our middle schools called Excel. I forget what the acronym stood for, but pretty much they had this one. It was a college prep program for middle school students, middle school, high school students. That's what
Hmm.
it was. And they have this one component where they talked about, you know, like a pathway to your goal in life, your aspirations, and through college, what have you. And they said, if you want to go into sports, you don't become an athlete. What else can you do to still be a part of that? Whether it's a physical therapist, whether it's a sports journalist, whether it's a sports lawyer. So those are the things that I think we need to teach our young people, especially black kids. Like, the agents are all white.
Hmm.
The
Right.
coaches are all mostly white. You know, these in this, and there are tons of great white people out there. You know, and Ronnie's one of them. Stacey Campbell's, you know, there's a ton of them out there. So I don't want people to think that all are bad, but sometimes there's these biases that we have that we don't realize.
Hmm.
Like, we have sometimes there's these racist undertones that are said, and then they aren't, people don't know. Like, you know,
Right.
when I have friends who are part of the LGBTQ community, I ask, tell me, because I don't know. I don't know if I'm saying something or doing something wrong.
And that is, I love that you do that. I mean, I'm part of that community. And when we started working with coalitions around the city, who represented that community, it was so refreshing and empowering for me when you would ask, because that's how you learn. I mean, I've learned I have to ask, and I have to listen. I have to shut my mouth and listen. This, what's going on now, it's not happening directly to me, and I don't have the solution, but I can be supportive. I can do more than put a couple of memes up and posts on Facebook and Twitter. I have to take action, because if I don't take action, I don't work to change the system that has created what's going on today. 400 years in the making. This isn't an overnight fix. Um, it's unbelievable what's going on, and that people are saying, well, isn't it time we just came together and started loving each other? It's not enough. It
I
is
don't know.
just not enough. We have to undo all of that's been done, all the damage, and that's going to take a very long time. But we got to start.
I think one of the things is being a black man is that a lot of us have similar stories, and it doesn't matter what city or county or state you live in, we have similar stories, and it's scary. My first interaction with a police officer, I was about 7 years old. His name was Officer Fox, and this was a very positive interaction. Like he would come, he was a beat worker. He would come through the block, toss the football around with the kids, and it was just him. He would come by like, hey, and I felt safe. I felt comfortable. And I didn't know at that time there was this thing about, black kids and officers, what have you. It was pleasant, and all of a sudden he stopped coming around. I don't know what happened to this officer, Officer Fox. If you're still around, Chevar from 23rd, misses you. But, and then I got older. Then I became 12, and we had a basketball court, and someone the neighborhood donated and got us a basketball court, so that we would play in the block, and the cops took the basketball court, and they made a joke out of it. They laughed and they rolled it away, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was like, cool, all right, you jerks, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then when I turned 16, this is when it just went all downhill for me and police officers. On Christmas Day, a friend of mine, his then girlfriend, was having a birthday party, some sort of a party. I don't know if it was a birthday. It was a party. 7 of us, and he was like, oh, just come uptown, let's go to the Bronx, go to this party. It's like, cool, so cool. We split into 2 groups. 4 went this way, me and 2 others went the other way, and we stop a taxi, and we get in the taxi, and we get in the taxi, tell them where we're going, and taxi driver or cab driver makes a U-turn, and all I see is these lights come on. And I had, we'll pull over. And I'm like, I'm still looking at the driver. I'm like, what did you do? Because again, we're 16-year-old kids. Like, we ain't doing nothing. It's Christmas Day. We definitely didn't do it. We just got gifts. We definitely didn't do anything. So, I'm like, what did you do? And I'm yelling at this guy. What did you do? What did you do? Like, what's going on? Like, what's going on? Because at that time, I heard stories about cops pulling them over, people over, and bad things happening. So I already heard these stories. And I hear the cops saying, put your hands where we can see them. You 2 on the end, put them out the window. You in the middle. I'm in the middle. Put them straight ahead. I'm like, how could you even see where my hands are? So I put my hands there, and these cops have guns pulled on us. And like I just black out, and I'm like, what's going on? So I'm freaking out. I'm like, why are you stopping us? And and then when I see these guns, I just stop talking, because like at that time I'm dead. I'm in my head, I'm dead. In my head, I'm like, they're gonna kill us. So, they pull us out, and they put us in the back trunk of the car, and with the guns pointed at us, and I'm just like freaking out, and they're searching us, they're searching our friends, and then I'm not sure in what order they searched us. I know I got searched also, when I remember being searched, and the cop with this gun pointed at me, searching me, and I'm like, did this guy just touch my genitals? Did he just like fondle me? I'm like, what the? And then when that happened, like, I was like, and like, how do I even respond? I didn't even look back. I just said, holy crap! He just grabbed my junk. Holy crap! Holy crap! Holy crap! And then they laughingly, haha, you guys can leave. And I'm walking down 121st. I'm like, yo, this guy just grabbed my junk. Like, what? They just had a gun. I'm like freaking out that entire night.
Yeah.
And, and we did end up going to the party. I don't remember anything at that party. I
Oh,
don't remember how we got there. I don't remember I don't remember anything after that. Like I remember we got there. I don't remember how again. I don't remember how we got there. I don't remember getting home. I just know that day was one of the first of many interactions with police officers at the age of 16 on Christmas Day. That happened to me, and I have a son who just turned 14, who's going to high school. I'm terrified,
I know you are. Rightfully
terrified.
so.
I don't want him to have that story. I don't want. I want those stories to stop. I want those stories to stop. I shouldn't have to hear, oh, I got a story some of that, and I don't even know you. Like I shouldn't have to hear that.
But like you said, probably every black man that you speak to is going to have countless stories like that.
But we shouldn't.
No, I mean, I can't tell you I have that kind of story. I don't. Every time I was stopped by the cops, I talked my way out of it, got a slap on the wrist, and was sent home. I even got stopped as an adult with an expired license and registration, and they didn't take the car. They just told me, "Hey, go, go renew this." Nothing, and it's like I'm not saying I wanted anything to happen, but what an
Absolutely
unfair
not.
system that allows that to occur. And and there's so much of this stuff going on. And when people have higher rates of drug and alcohol use
Yeah.
or certain behaviors, what do we expect?
Yeah.
We have a system that's pushing people over the edge.
Yeah. No, definitely. Again, that day I'm like, are they gonna play drugs on us? I was just freaking out. It was just one of the scariest parts of my life. And I've been in scary situations as a teenager and as a young adult, but the people who are supposed to protect me put me in a situation where I feared more for my life than anyone else in the hood.
Well, so how do you talk to your child about that? I mean, and still keep them hopeful and to want to live their lives and keep them on, on a positive path.
My son smiles. My kids, period. Well, my daughter's older now. She's in college, so she has more awareness of what's going on. But my son, he smiles all the time, and I try to talk to him about it. He goes, "Yeah, Dad, I know, I know." I'm like, "But I need you to understand, because the school he went to for the past, 8 years, 7 years, he actually transferred schools. It was a progressive school, so it was so multiracial. Everyone by their first names, and it wasn't about your sexuality. It was about being a human in that school. And I was like, wow. I was even more afraid because I'm like, when you leave this school, reality's gonna hit. Reality is
Right.
gonna hit, because this school is like a safe haven of like, it was like with the Rainbow Coalition, which you think the Rainbow Coalition would be. That was that school. Like, and I'm like, wow, you are now a young man, and the world isn't going to see you. I hope the world sees you as a young man. I hope the world. I mean, they can see you as a black young man. That's cool. I told them that's cool, but not as a threat to them. You look like a baby still in the face. So I'm glad he still looks like a baby. He hasn't had this like tremendous growth spurt, and like he's not like a wide case, very thin kid. So I'm still happy for that. But it doesn't really matter, because you have like the situation like Tamir Rice. You have these things that they're babies, and these things still happen. But I talk to my kids about drugs and alcohol, and like I said, my daughter's older now. Like, making better decisions for yourself. Again, putting yourself in a space where you are going to be successful. You can have fun without doing those things. I do. Like, you can
Right.
have fun. Putting yourself in, and if you have friends who choose to, try to be a beacon for them, to help guide them. And if they don't, they want to continue. Unfortunately, that's their choice, but you still have to be there for them in some shape or form, because
Hmm.
eventually they're gonna see, like my friends, dude, what did you do differently? Like, again, like I didn't grow up with my dad to tell me these things. You treat your friends like this, treat your friends like that. Me was more based on observation of watching my mom struggle, working 2 jobs and going to school at the same time, getting her degree, and then, so that's something that I did. I learned through observation, and I credit my mom. Granted, she wasn't there the way I wanted her to be, but I understood at a young age what the situation was.
Mm.
You know, and she didn't do drugs. She loved to party, so she did her parties and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So and we talked the other guy, we talked about drugs, what have you, and she frowned upon those things. But she also said this is a choice that you have to make for yourself. I can't stop that choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I always use the analogy for parents, and this is about life in general. Like you say you have 2 kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as you do, Ronnie, as you do, you have 2 kids,
Furry ones.
2 furry kids. And what happens is people take credit for the kid who the good kid, right? But the kid who did bad, no one takes any credit for any responsibility for it. They put them down, they yell at them. It's like that you give them the same opportunities. You have to understand these are choices. The good kid chose to do those things, right? Chose to take that path. The quote unquote bad or challenge child, that was also a choice also. But how do you support them both? You got to take credit. For me, I more would take credit for as a parent. I'm lucky enough my children are doing the right things at the moment because life changes.
Right.
But I always said if something happens, I'm going to take responsibility in how I can support that child who needs the support. And I talked to my kids about, you guys need different things. You are not the same. Mm. And in life, you are not the same. This person might have used a drug or some sort of a substance. They had a circumstance when they might have came from an affluent family, might have came from parents who were college professors, but something in their life pushed them in that direction. And how, like you said earlier, the how or why. Let's figure that out. And how can we support these people? What made you choose that decision? And we don't hold it over their head. Because like holding something over their head, an individual's head, doesn't help them.
That's right.
It doesn't.
But I think, you hit the nail on the head there. We often allow ourselves to see people who are addicted to substances as less than human or
Absolutely.
lower on the human scale.
And
we forget, no. In fact, maybe they've got more humanity because that's part of the problem. For me, it was feeling too much. Right. I'm a hypersensitive person in a lot of ways and take on too much feeling and empathy and it would hurt me. I've learned how to do that in a positive way now. But when I was younger and when I went down the path of addiction, it started out as a choice. Yeah, I chose to use drugs in the beginning, but once I was in the throes of it, I didn't know I had a choice. You lose the ability to understand you have a choice. Okay. And when I got into recovery, and I used for 28 years.
Wow.
I was 45 when I got into recovery, and I learned I had a choice. And I learned that from a 19-year-old who was in my program, and he was somebody who was very influential in my recovery. And we were probably emotionally, he was probably older than me. And I learned that, yeah, I may have a choice today, but we don't know that. And we forget that every time we see somebody out there who's, addicted to drugs, that's someone's son, daughter,
absolutely,
mother, father,
yes,
uncle,
yes,
friend, their loved niece, nephew.
Yes.
We need to keep in mind that these are human beings and there's reasons why people use, there's one reason why everybody uses to change the way they feel. But the reason for wanting to is different.
Yes.
And when we lose that perspective, we stigmatize them, and we're doing that in so many ways, not just in drugs, but in through race, and that goes through any race. I know I'm perceived a certain way as an older white woman, but I think we all need to be able to look at ourselves in the mirror and figure out, how do I come across and who am I? When you were talking, I was thinking of something that happened to me many years ago. It was 1989, and I was working in a facility for homeless families in Jamaica, Queens, and almost the entire staff was Black. And I'd gone to school at York College in Jamaica, so I didn't, I didn't really think anything of it, as being somebody who was very much a minority in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I didn't realize that I had to earn people's trust. I couldn't just walk in and have the same type of trust I'd had at my college.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got there, there was immediate bias against me. And I was working with this lovely young woman. Her name was Marty, and she was the assistant director. And a lot of people were angry that she didn't get the job. She had worked at it. She deserved to get it, but they went and hired me. And a lot of people were talking behind my back, and they would say to her, "Why are you talking to that white girl?" And she'd say, "I was a girl then." I mean, I was technically a woman, but I was a lot younger. And she would say to them, "You don't know her. She's really nice. Get to know her." And for a long time, people just kind of were rude to me. They didn't want to talk to me, but I realized they didn't know me. And why should
Absolutely,
they
yeah,
trust
yeah.
me? They'd been screwed with before. They'd seen people not get promoted. They had no reason to trust me. And that November, it was right before Thanksgiving. I ran this big program. I had this big auditorium because I built a whole entertainment center there. I was given funds to do it. And I had a staff member who was a preacher. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, "Would you mind if we had a service here the night before Thanksgiving? And, with the system?" I said, "Oh, of course." And he said, "Would you like to come?" I said, "Yeah." So this Jewish girl went to, went to, I think it was a Baptist service, and I went there, and there were 500 people there.
Wow.
It
Wow.
wasn't. I thought it was going to be like 50. There were 500 people, and I'm the only white face in the crowd. This shiny, and at first a lot of people were looking at me, and they had every reason to be suspicious of my motives. They don't know me,
Mm-hmm,
and at
mm-hmm.
some point in the evening, Bruce, his name was, stood up there and said, "And I want to thank my supervisor, Ronnie Katz, for giving us this opportunity and giving us this space and encouraging me." And he just had all these platitudes about me. And people then turned around. I felt 1,000 eyes on me and said, "Oh," the next thing I knew people converged around me. There were arms all over me. And we were swaying to Swing Low, Sweet Chariot,
Mm-hmm.
which was it was just amazing. And I knew then from that moment on, I had earned trust. It
Mm-hmm.
took me from August through November. But once people got to know me, there were no barriers. And I think that's an important thing that people have to realize. As white allies, we can't just walk into communities. As people starting coalitions, we can't just walk into communities and expect everyone to trust us. We have to build relationships. And this is what, for me, this is the crux of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Starting with relationships, gaining each other's trust, and then working together to build something better.
I want to say thank you for that because I've been watching a lot of news recently. I laugh because, like I told Ronnie, I don't watch TV or the news anymore. But I've been watching the news recently, and there's some conservatives who go on TV and they talk about trying. And so, trying is a word I kind of eliminated from my vocabulary because I say when you try,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't do it. Whenever someone said I tried, I mean, did you do it? No. So you didn't try harder. But anyway, this individual was talking about, he went into the black community and he tried to help out and they turned him away, and then they asked him, like, how many times did you try? I tried, it was like once or twice, like, but for how long? Do they even know who you are? Because right now, you are, in their eyes, you are currently the president of the United States. You come in and you have his values.
Mm-hmm.
And you say certain things in the one of the correspondents tried to explain to him that what he's saying is racist. They were saying, like, we aren't calling you racist, but the words you were using are racist. And he couldn't get that in his head. He was like, but I'm not racist. It kept saying, no one said you are. It's your actions, the words.
Mm-hmm.
Once you figure out, like you said, like once that group has to get to know you, you also have to get to know that group also.
That's right.
You have to figure out, all right, these are things that they need and these are things that I need. Like you just can't come into anywhere. Even when you're coaching sports or if you are a musician joining a new band, you can't just go in there and just do your thing because people
Right.
are going to rebel against you. And they aren't going to trust you, or ain't going to believe you, because sometimes people, like you said, are led astray. They have been let down. They've been looked over. Like I want to be the lead singer, but you gave it to someone else.
Right.
Like how is that fair? I've been singing background for forever, and I write all the songs. My voice is just as good as yours. Or or you came in and you are the white savior. Like, no, we save each other. You don't save me. We help each other.
That's right. And it's about, respecting and trusting each other. It takes time. I used to always give this speech to kids when I used to run a camp with 90 kids, and any kids I worked with, I'd start out by saying, you don't know me, I don't know you. I'm coming
Right.
in here today with respect for you. I
Right.
hope at some point you'll feel that for me,
Right.
but I don't expect you to have it today.
And that's a great way to start off. You have to tell people that, like, I don't. Even when I used to supervise staff, I would go into a new program. Like, I know you don't like me. You don't know me. But my job is to gain your trust. And all of my staff will tell you that I have gained their trust. My former staff, that is, they would tell you, because that was what it was all about. How could I put you in a space of success? And that also goes back to prevention. How do we put these young people or adults in a space of success where they aren't using any, either aren't using or haven't started or won't start or stop using? How do we put them in a space of success? And what does success look like for them? And one of the key things that I like to ask people is, like, what is it that you need? Because me going and say, you need this, dude, like, and I mentioned this a couple of shows. My advice growing up as a teenager was writing graffiti, right?
Right.
So I'm like, don't tell me, I was a really good kid, but I remember one time a friend of mine was tagging. I was just sitting there chilling. I had no intentions of writing any graffiti that night. Like, I had no intentions. And my aunt, walked up to me and said, I'm telling, like, what are you telling? Like, you're writing. I'm like, I'm not doing anything. He's writing. Go tell his mother. He said, I'm going to go tell your mother. I was like, you know what? The teenager in me said, okay, I'm going to get in trouble. Hey, such and such, can you give me that can? Since you're going to tell me anyway. Like,
Right.
like
Well,
that.
but a label was created for you, a stereotype. So
Yeah,
when you put that on people, you're giving them something to be. It's not
yeah,
necessarily who they want to be or who you want them to be.
yeah,
But if that's what, like, I used to have a friend who'd say, treat me like a child and I'll act like one.
absolutely. And that goes back to treat me like a drug addict. I'm gonna act like a drug or alcoholic or any type of a user. Like, again, let's figure out, because, like, I don't know what a relapse is. I don't know what recovery is. I don't know those things. Like if you don't mind me asking something personal, like, how did you deal with that? Like, did you have relapses? If you don't mind sharing, if
No,
you don't.
I don't mind sharing at all. I tell my recovery story very openly.
Mhm.
I don't talk about which fellowship I went to, but
Okay,
I
that's not a
learned that the
problem.
hard way.
Mhm.
uh, but I'll give you some context. I'll give you a brief rundown of my story.
Right.
It was late 80s. I guess it was right after, it was 89. I had left a job at the place for homeless families and started a job with the DOE here in New York. And I had been using up until that point. And I realized I couldn't continue to do that. I started feeling like a hypocrite. And
Mhm.
that's a few months after I got that job, I got really sick
Mhm.
and I couldn't use
Mm.
because we don't even know what I had. I had some kind of mysterious virus. I was sick for like 3 weeks
Oh, wow.
and I didn't use for those weeks. And I started to realize how good I felt. It
Okay.
was the first time in over 20 years I hadn't used on a daily basis. And I decided that, well, you know what? I'm going to try to keep it like this. I spent the next 7.5 years trying to keep it like that, and doing it myself. Um, and I wasn't totally honest with myself, which made
Okay.
it even harder. So for the next 7.5 years, I struggled, but I was going down the path. I was getting closer and closer. And then in '97, I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, because I just went on a leap of faith. I'd been
Mhm.
there to visit friends, fell in love with the city,
Mhm.
kept looking for jobs. And finally, I just said, you know what? I found an apartment. I'm going. I'll find something. And I went down there on Brooklyn Queens Day. I left, which,
Nice.
1997 with a friend, Joseph, who drove down with me in my little Saturn and my 3 cats and my dog. And we all piled into the Saturn and went down there. I had an apartment. I had no job. I went down there and I believed my higher power will provide. That's what grandma always says.
Mhm.
And it happened. And I wound up getting down there and went online. As soon as I got down there, I'd never had a computer, got a
Mhm.
computer, and I discovered this chat room called Women's Point of View on AOL. And
I remember well. I remember
yeah, and
it.
I met all these people. It wasn't just women, but mostly women, and these easy people. And I would sit every night, and here I am alone, don't really know anybody in Nashville, and I would drink. I wasn't using my drugs of choice, at least, but I was drinking a lot with the chat room, sitting there
Wow.
with alcohol, drinking away, and realizing I've got a really big problem. And
Wow.
ran into somebody in the chat room who was in recovery,
Wow.
and she started talking to me, and that was June. I met them all. That October I walked into my first meeting, and I just said why I was there. And I mean, I'll make this brief because it's a long story. I picked up a medallion for 90 days because I hadn't used my drug of choice in 90 days, but I was still drinking. And when I got home and told her, she reamed me. This is all through instant message or on the phone. We didn't have any of this.
Right,
And
right,
she
right.
said, "You're not honest." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "You drink." And in a burning bush kind of surrender moment, I realized she was right. And while she watched me typing, I poured out all the alcohol in my house, went back the next day to this meeting I'd gone to, handed back the medallion and the chip and said, "I lied to you. I wasn't honest. I need a white one," which is surrender. And when I told them all that, they dedicated the meeting to me and dedicated it to honesty. And I've never looked back. So on October 11th, I hope to have 23 years in recovery. But I was so miserable inside that I had to do something. I was in a new city, in a beautiful apartment. I had a great job. I had gotten a really good job by that point. Everything on paper was incredible, except the hole inside was so deep I couldn't fill it anymore. And that's what made me say, I got to do something. And when I went there and I heard someone's story, I said, that's my story. If he can get better, so can I. And that's why I tell my story, because if you're out there and you're struggling, it's up to you at this point whether you want to at least just walk in and hear somebody or take an action. You don't have to stop. Just listen. And you might be able to do this, because I used for 28 years and it wasn't easy. But once I started to get into it and I got into recovery, I realized life in recovery was so incredible. Even my worst day in recovery was far better than my best day using. So that's my little pitch.
Thank you for sharing.
So that was a long answer to a short question.
No.
I just want to end with a quote. You were talking about Chadwick Boseman earlier, and I read an incredible quote this morning. My cousin posted it. As tell me the name of the character. I never pronounce it right. King T'Challa.
T'Challa, King T'Challa.
King T'Challa's quote: "We will work to be an example of how we, as brothers and sisters on this earth, should treat each other. Now more than ever, the illusions of division threaten our very existence. We all know the truth. More connects us than separates us. But in times of crisis, the wise build bridges, while the foolish build barriers. We must find a way to look after one another as if we were one single tribe." So with that, I think that's something to ponder. Um, I hope everybody out there is doing okay. Take the time to take care of you, and let's start building those bridges.
Definitely. For those who want to be allies to anyone, listen and ask questions, and,
Yeah.
and support.
And understand. Don't think you know it all, because
Absolutely.
like you said, ask questions. There's so much I don't understand, I need to ask, and not just once, on a continuing basis, because I want to be a part of the solution.
Haha, nothing changes if we change nothing.
You have a good one, Chevar, and it was great talking with you today, and we'll be back again soon.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
listening. And please look down and see that button that says subscribe, and subscribe to our channel. Take care. Talk to you later.